All right, everybody. Welcome to a Saturday night edition live stream of the Saints Happy Hour podcast. As always, we are sponsored by SeatGeek. Go there. They have a great app. Green light means you're getting a good deal. Yellow light means you're getting an okay deal. Red light means you're not getting such a good deal. Use the code ACAA. Right now, you get $20 off your first purchase, Andrew. That's $20. You get 2 free beers, whatever event you want to go to. They have tickets for concerts, football games, any event you want. Life's an event. They have the tickets. Once again, use the code ACAA for $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek, we love them because they sponsor the podcast. All right, Andrew.
Make sure you follow us on Facebook and YouTube too, right?
Yeah, we're giving away a free double extra large T-shirt because it's one of the last ones left in the last order we did. So we ordered some more, obviously, but that's one of the last ones. So when we get to 500 followers on YouTube, I'm gonna send a free T-shirt to one of the 500 people that subscribe to us on YouTube. So go there, subscribe. That doesn't cost you shit. Just do it, and you can get a free T-shirt. So do it. All right, Andrew. As you can see, if you're in the live stream right now, my logo for the Saints thing is Loomis Did Loomis again. Saints draft day 3 trade live stream. The Saints traded up again, Andrew. At this point, we're not even fazed by it. Look, I mean, the Saints say they got 3 guys in their top 70. So if this draft sucks, I want the media to remind them of that next year and be like, hey, last year you said you got 3 of the top 70 and they were all trash. What happened? But the Saints seem pretty pleased with their draft so far, which every team is pleased after the draft. But how do you feel about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at Mickey Loomis, you watched his press conference, which I did. He basically said, "This is our strategy. He owned it. This is who we are, and we've had success doing this." And he said, it doesn't work every time, but we feel like that's been our philosophy. If we have a guy, we're going to go get him. If we like a guy, and other teams do that too, and we've seen other teams have success with it, and we've had success with it, so that's our deal. And I know that doesn't jive with some analytics people. I know there's Saints bloggers out there that don't like it, but obviously the Rams, the Patriots, they have a different way of doing it. They trade down, they accumulate as many picks as possible. They want to reach into the cookie jar as many times as they can and hope they pull out something that's useful to them. So, those are 2 schools of thoughts. And obviously, look, the Rams and Patriots are very successful, but the Saints have been very successful too. So,
I mean, what was interesting to me is they drafted, obviously in the 4th round. They moved up. I was like, okay, the draft's about to start. I can get to Chick-fil-A and I can get back. And I know the Saints, it's likely that they're going to trade up, but I think I've got some time. I had no time. They traded up right as I was getting my food at the Chick-fil-A window. And they traded up for Chauncey Gardiner Johnson, who I said sounds like the clinic that you send Uncle Pete to get cured off the wild turkey. And he's a safety from Florida. And a lot of Saints Twitter was like, why the fuck do we need a safety? We got 3 on the roster already. But here's the thing, Andrew. Von Bell's a free agent after this year, and I don't know whether the Saints, if he's in their long-term plans,
hold on. Who's their third safety?
Chris Banjo, right?
You're counting Banjo? Yeah, okay. I mean, he's a special teamer. So anyway, continue.
So the thing is, so let's say they count Chris Banjo as not a special teamer and he's a backup safety. Von Bell, right? Is he in the long-term plans for Saints? I don't know. Is he not? I don't know. And they have a ton of people to sign, so they're going to have to make hard decisions on a lot of these guys. So it's not inconceivable. Von Bell could blow the fuck up this year, and the Saints could be like, "Hey, we got Rankins, we got Thomas, we got Kamara, we got all these dudes we gotta pay. Sorry, Von Bell, we can't pay you because somebody's gonna pay you 4 years, $32 million. We're not gonna pay you that." And Johnson, hey, you're the guy in 2020. So it didn't stun me that they picked a safety, even though a lot of people were.
Yeah, like you said, Von Bell could be walking in a year. I mentioned yesterday that I have this little spreadsheet that combines the aggregate score of 4 different websites, and I mentioned yesterday that Eric McCoy was great value when they drafted him because he was 41 on that list, and they ended up taking him 48, so that was pretty good value. Well, Chauncey Gardiner Johnson was actually 36th on that composite list, and he was picked 105 overall, so the value with him is even better. He was graded very highly. He's a very good player, in my opinion, and once again, I don't know if these guys are going to be any good, but what's undeniable is that if you look at where they were picked versus how they were rated based on general consensus, these guys should have gone higher. And for whatever reason, they fell, and the Saints ended up getting players that represent good value. So, I think when you go through this draft, I think there's 2 things. First of all, it's important to realize that any expectations about what the Saints were going to get out of this draft class when they had no first, no third, and no fourth, this was always going to be an exercise of if they can get 1 or 2 guys that contribute, that's going to be a win this year because they really don't have much to work with. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I think is important to realize is the starting spots are pretty much filled. So we're just talking about getting backups, and we don't know year to year how things change on this roster. You mentioned, they're going to have to pay Kamara, they're going to have to pay Thomas, they're going to have to pay Lattimore. These are decisions that are coming, and I just feel like safety is probably one of those positions where they keep drafting guys and they keep going on minimum salaries there. So you've got to reload. Von Bell, this could be his replacement. I mean, we'll see what happens, and I'm not saying Von Bell is gone. But if this guy plays well and Gardiner Johnson proves himself to be a productive player, he could end up being a guy. But I think in year 1, he's a guy that makes the team and contributes.
Yeah, and I mean, look, this draft is going to be judged on, is McCoy good? If McCoy's good, this draft is a success. If he isn't good and they are having issues at center in 2020, 2021, this draft is going to be judged as a failure.
Maybe in isolation, but again, I mean, you have to realize components of this draft are Eli
for Teddy
Apple,
Bridgewater, and
Teddy
I get
Bridgewater,
that. Yeah,
Marcus
but I mean
Davenport.
the picks themselves. I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like overall, I think you can give. I said it in my preview column for Channel 4. I think you can give this draft an A+. You got Davenport, you got a center to replace Unger, you got Teddy Bridgewater in the 3rd, and you got Eli Apple starting corner in the 4th, and you got another safety that you think can start and play the slot corner. That's 5 guys right there that you think you can get. But as far as the picks themselves, like it's McCoy. Like when we look back at this draft, and you think of the picks.
I sort of agree with you on that, but I still just think like you're dealing with the stacked deck. Like you've got to. It's not that uncommon that a 2nd round pick, 48th overall, ends up not working out or not being any good. Like that's totally in play. And I wouldn't call it a disaster or a bust because, again, like this is a stacked deck. Like we shouldn't elevate expectations of a 2nd round pick.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like what, 50-50 at best, the 2nd round pick works out. And that's just the reality. But personally, I feel better that he's a center that was picked here because we know centers always fall down in the draft because they're not valued positions, at least in terms of what teams want to get in the 1st round. So usually when you pick a center in the 2nd round, it's usually the 2nd or 3rd best guy in the draft, and they end up being pretty safe picks.
Yeah, and I mean the thing that's really tricky about center as I and granted, people you know me, I'm not like you, I'm not doing a spreadsheet and having composites and watching film and all that. But the interesting thing that I think makes center a complex thing to grade to figure out for teams is because a lot of times centers, like this center, he's really fast. But his
Yeah.
other issues, he's not that agile, maybe, but he's really fast, and you have to have a really, like any player, you have to have a vision for them. The Saints talk about, but at center, it can be really tricky because their physical skills, because they're a center, don't matter as much as offensive linemen with reach and size and all that. So center can be very tricky. So the Saints too, they have a history of being, except for Charles Brown, most of their offensive line picks they've done in the first 3, 4 rounds have been really good. I mean, Charles Brown was a disaster, but he started. Rick Leonard was a huge miss last year, but most of the guys, Bushrod and Jari Evans and those type guys, they work out. The Saints know what they're doing, so I feel really good about this pick. And the other thing I really liked about it, and the more I thought about it, I mentioned it last night, Andrew, was Loomis getting back that fourth round pick to me was, I said it last night, it was really big. But I think about it now is, they moved up to get that safety. They gave up a fifth. I don't care about that. So they got two guys. So if either one of these guys work out, you can say the trade was worth it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it gives them a little bit of wiggle room, which I like. Um, the rest of the picks, I really like the fact that the tight end they drafted, Alize Mack of Notre Dame, that's also a French cognac and vodka. So I like the fact that the Saints went full alcohol on the Notre Dame tight end, even though I hate Notre Dame. They drafted another safety, Quan Hampton, in the sixth round. And Caden Ellis, a linebacker from Idaho, at 244 was their last pick. Andrew, you were really interested in the linebacker from Idaho. I saw you tweeting on the Saints Happy Hour podcast Twitter,
Yeah.
which
So,
everybody should follow, by the way.
yeah, again, I mean, I can't promise any of these guys are going to be any good. I do know the roster, and I think I can explain. These picks all make sense to me. I think if they're the one a pick that I maybe like the least of all these, I would say it's Quan Hampton in the sixth round. You just take a safety in Gardiner Johnson. Hampton's more of a high safety, so slightly different position. He would be maybe backing up Marcus Williams, but to me, he's going to be a special team guy. He's going to be competing with your Justin Hardys, your Chris Banjos, and I think that, and your Taysom Hills, and I think the Saints are pretty stacked there. I think they're pretty stacked, so I think it's an upward battle for Quan Hampton, and he's a guy that probably goes on. If I had to guess, I would bet that he's a guy that's a practice squad player. Alize Mack, I mean, number 3 tight end is wide open for the Saints, and so when I see the Saints pick him in the 7th round, he's going up against Garrett Griffin and Dan Arnold. I mean, those are the types of guys he's going up against for that number 3 tight end spot, and he can absolutely win it. I think he could be productive as a receiver, and he's going to have to develop as a blocker, but he's a guy that there's a path to him making the team. So that makes a lot of sense for me. And then Caden Ellis, again, he is so fast. His 40 times and his cone drills are crazy. So you lose Manti Te'o, he's gone, and Craig Robertson is really the only backup at linebacker right now on this roster that I trust. So, again, you've got Beagle, who's more of a special teams guy, and obviously Ellis is going to be vying for that, and with his speed, I think he can be valuable there. But his speed also gives you a situational guy that can blitz. His speed means that he can run with tight ends down the seam, so he may give you some interesting situational,
And the thing about
usage.
the Saints, their linebacking drafting the last 20 plus years is putrid. I
Disaster.
mean,
Yeah.
you could say the best Saints drafted linebacker in the last 20 years, 25 years, if you cut off it's probably either Mark
Mark
Fields,
Fields, right? Yeah.
Mark Fields, who was the number one, or if you go a little bit later and you want to cut it off at like 25 years, because Mark Fields was 1994. Well, Mark Fields would be 94, so he would, or 95, so he'd fit in. But it's Mark Fields and it's Winford Tubbs, and Winford Tubbs was really only good for 1 year.
A year and a half, yeah.
You know, and that's not to say we love Anzalone here because we get to play the Mario music and everything, but he's still like mostly a situational guy, and he was really interesting last year and solid, but he's not. I wouldn't say he's solidified himself as an above average starter, and I would say Anzalone's probably in the top 3 of the best linebackers. But all that said, Andrew, I really like it when you pick guys late in the draft that have freakish athletic talent. Like Ellis can fucking run, and his like cone drill or whatever the fuck that is if he'd have done it at the combine, it'd have been like the 3rd best one for the linebackers. So at least he's got the profile to do it, and I like guys like that almost as I get older better than guys in the 6th, 7th round that are like not big, not strong, not fast, but produced a lot at college, at high level, even at a big school. I would rather small school dudes with freakish athletic ability, because I feel like they're more like teams are a little more likely to miss on them or whatever. And maybe he'll have a chance, and maybe the Saints will finally stumble upon a linebacker. You would think eventually they would do it after 20, like they would just randomly stumble into a Pro Bowl linebacker in one of these rounds just by fucking accident.
Yeah, well, again, I think these picks all make sense to me because there's paths on to the roster for all of these guys, and Quan Hampton's maybe the one where I think it's maybe more of a long shot, but again, practice squad is totally feasible for him. So, we'll see how all these picks pan out. And the main thing, so coming out of this draft, I look at it and I'm just like, man, I still don't see a receiver. And I really wish there was one, and I still don't see a pass rusher. So those are the 2 spots I would say if I'm looking at this roster right now and I'm thinking what else could be added. I think Ziggy Ansah, they got to get that done. That would be the first thing for me is they need to get out. They need to hit up his agent and secure that player and finalize that deal because pass rush needs to be improved. And then from there, I don't know if you consider bringing back Des Bryant if his recovery from the injury looks okay, or if they hope that some of these undrafted rookies that they've signed, they got the guy from Humphrey from Texas, maybe they look good in training camp and you feel better about it. But
Little Jordan, his name is Little Jordan. That means if he makes the team and has a drop, or it's terrible in August, we can do the crying Jordan meme all summer. Andrew, I support that signing 110%.
Yeah, well, and it looks like also they got this guy, Deontay Harris, who is a kick returner receiver from Assumption College. So the Tommy Lee Lewis little dude role has also been filled.
All right,
so
Andrew,
Saints fans everywhere rejoice.
Andrew, answer a question in the chat room. I have got to go plug in my son's baby monitor. It is beeping the alert that it is dying. It's probably driving people batty in the background. So answer a question in the chat room, and I'll be back in 15 seconds.
All right. Well, we have a question from Jason Champagne, and he is asking, how happy are you that we didn't fork over next year's 1? Well, they did give up a 2. So, obviously you go into next year now, and already you go from 7 picks to 6 with no second-round pick. And here's the deal. The Saints are going to probably make a trade at the deadline. They'll probably give up a pick to go get a player. Now, it won't be a 1.
How do you know it won't be a 1, Andrew?
Yeah, I don't think players that good become available usually, but
that's true.
Amari Cooper did, and he cost the 1 last year, so it's possible. So, but yeah, I'm not crazy about how. We knew this was going to happen, so it's certainly not a surprise. But yeah, I guess it'll be nice next year to have a first round pick. Sure.
I'm going to give you um, a name, and this is really early um, name at the trade deadline for the Saints that they will burn a third or a fourth round pick for. Evan Ingram, the tight end
Mm.
for the Giants.
Yeah,
Because
you've been on that one for a while.
I have been. Dave Gettleman is a fucking idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing with the Giants. He will liquidate that roster further next year. And I could see the Saints, if Cooks is injured or not what they thought he was, and the new tight end they got, Mack from Notre Dame, he's not there. Josh Hill is still Josh Hill, which they like him, and he's a great backup tight end. But they're like, we are struggling at tight end. We need a dude. I could totally see the Saints giving a 2023 or a 2024 for Evan Ingram, like no problem. So I'm just gonna put that
Yeah.
out there right now in April.
So John Zapecki is asking who is our number two receiver at this point.
That's a good
That's a
question.
good question. Right for now, to me, Trey Quan Smith is Robert Meacham light in his prime. And until he gets better, I mean, I'm expecting big things from him, and I think he'll make a leap. But I don't really view Trey Quan as a number two. I view Trey Quan as a guy that exploits one-on-one favorable matchups when all the other playmakers around him are getting more attention. So he's a peak Meacham light at this point in his career. The Cam Meredith thing is too bad because he would have been a fantastic player for the Saints if he was healthy. And there's still a chance he'll rebound, but to me, he was the profile that could have easily been the number two.
Yeah, I'm not ready
Unfortunately, it
to.
doesn't look. I'm not writing him off. I just it's not looking good for him. Again, to me, he's a number three. He's kind of a Devery Henderson
Yeah.
at this point in his career, and maybe a little bit better than that, but not much. So I'll be honest. If you're asking me right now who's the number two, I think it's Keith Kirkwood. I think he is at least now. That doesn't mean I think he's necessarily the second best receiver on this team, but I kind of view
And
number
that's Kamara.
two. That's
Sec-
yeah, absolutely. But and obviously Jared Cook is going to be an important part of this passing offense. But I just look at Kirkwood when I think about a number two. I think about a guy that complements the number one, a guy who, on 2nd and 7 can get you to 7 yards, can get to the sticks, and I just think Kirkwood's that guy right now. And until I see someone else step up or I see something I don't like from him, I think he is a starting receiver for the Saints right now.
Yeah, I mean, and look, they threw to Kirkwood in big spots last year. He caught the touchdown against Dallas, which was a weird play, but the big fourth down play against Philly, it was him. You know,
Yeah, he
so they
uses his size well, and that's the thing. That's what Colston. That's what made him so successful in this offense. And I think if Kirkwood can continue to develop his chemistry with Breeze, again, the size. It's all about how you play with that size. Brandon Coleman, to me, never really used his size as well as he could and should have, but Kirkwood does. So,
yeah.
but yeah, John Champagne makes a good point. Obviously Jared Cook is the number two option. Kamara is the number two option, but I think Cook becomes the number three at this point.
Yeah, and I mean the Saints. Any of you, and by the way, another reason to follow the Saints Happy Hour Twitter feed is one, Andrew wants to get to 10,000 followers, so help him do that. But also, Andrew, you were killing it on the free agency today. You scoured the Twitters and you were beating media. You were beating legit media people. I saw. I was like, I don't need to follow legit media. I just need to follow the Saints Happy Hour podcast because Andrew's fucking on it. So who of anybody the free agents that they signed, the UDFA's, and look, I know people lose their mind about UDFAs and we'll go through the whole thing again of, oh my God, they can't cut insert player's name because they'll never clear waivers, which is total BS. It's gonna, that's gonna happen. But any of the UDFAs like caught your eye as sort of, besides Little Jordan as a fun name, any of them really caught your eye? You're like, huh, That's interesting.
I thought that it was interesting they signed Nick Moore, the long snapper out of Georgia, only because it was Zach Wood's birthday today, their long
Oh,
snapper.
cold.
So, so the fact that they signed a long snapper on the long snapper's birthday, I feel like that had a little Mike Carney undertones to it.
Ooh, rough.
But I would say of the guys signed.
What about today? Is today the worst day of your life? Yeah.
Corbin Kafuski is interesting to me out of BYU. He was a teammate of Taysom Hill's, and he's 6'10". He's a defensive end. He's 6'10", so he is enormous. Yeah, so I don't really know how that works. I don't. 6'10" almost feels like it's too big to be a defensive end, but anyway, the freakish height alone has piqued my interest. Darnell Holland, the running back, put up ungodly numbers at Kennesaw State. Now he's a small school guy, but he can do it all. I mean, he's a receiver, he's explosive, and so he's a guy that I think, if nothing else, will be exciting to watch in preseason in the fourth quarter.
Jason asks, how does my wife feel about the Dolphins getting Rosen? So you probably just did that because
My wife.
you wanted to hear that. But my wife is really excited to not have to watch Ryan Tannehill anymore. Like that's her thing. I mean, Josh Rosen. I know like Steve Smith got on him today, like, oh, he should compete with the Cardinals or whatever. He should be happy to get out of there. Like if a team trades up to get you, and then a year later they don't want you and they draft another dude, like you want out of there. And like Arizona, I don't know if Josh Rosen's any good, but how fucking bad does your offensive coordinator have to be, Andrew, where year one you fire him after 6 weeks? Like think about how bad that situation had to be, where the first year head coach of Arizona, where he brings all his guys, he's like, my offensive coordinator is so bad, I gotta hit eject on this dude, and it's week 6 of my first year. Like, did he like not know how to call plays? Did he like not know how to draw up a game plan? Like, you think those are funny questions that I ask, but I'm only being half serious. Like,
yeah,
that's
well, and
awful.
it begs the question if he had been paired with Sean Payton or Jim McVay or Sean McVay
or Belichick, or like,
would it have been different? So
I don't know.
I mean, you give talent to the right. I mean, I think a lot of times with a lot of players, it's about fit and scheme. And I think that can make or break a guy.
And his this year for Josh Rosen, his rookie year, looked a lot like Drew Brees' third year with San Diego. And look, I didn't want the Saints to get another quarterback. I said that yesterday. But if the Saints if they didn't have Bridgewater and they'd have done a deal for like a 2022nd or even 62 or whatever for Rosen, and they had Rosen as Drew Brees' backup, I'd have been like, okay, that's cool, that's interesting, I get it. So it it is what it is. This is from Wargoat 4. Does anything that the Saints did today have a chance to get into future Sean Payton worst decision bracket?
Hey, I think you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Sorry, I thought I lost you for a second.
We're back. So Andrew, somebody was saying, is today potentially the worst Sean Payton bracket decision ever? Is something that happened in this draft? Is that possible?
I just don't think the stakes are high enough with these picks. So no.
Unless the wheels come off and next year's second rounder is in the top 3 and it's 30, 32, 33, 34, 35, then you can say it was a bad decision because you took a bunch of risk and it blew up in your face. But short of that, no.
Yeah, and I think, let's see, Melissa H., did we get to that? The player most disappointed that we didn't take?
Yeah, no, answer that.
I mean, for me, I don't know, I'm a homer, but I wanted Foster Moreau, the tight end of LSU. So that, I'm fine with the Notre Dame kid. I was kind of hoping. I mean, it's a homer thing, but I also thought it was a good fit.
He
And
he went.
the Raiders ended up getting him.
Yeah, he went. He went about where I thought he was going to go. To be honest,
Here's a question for you: if the Saints had not traded up in the fourth, would that fifth round pick, or did he end up going late in the fourth?
no, he went in the fourth. It wouldn't. It wouldn't
Okay,
have
so
gotten
they would have had to take him instead of Gardner Johnson.
They would have had to take him. They could have taken him at 116. You know, he would have been there. So I think I like Foster Moreau. I think LSU just misused him. I think he's got physical skills and he's like really smart and fun. So he'd have been a great LSU person to have around. So that but besides that, I can't say that's our home. You know, me and you, Andrew, and probably everybody on the stream, right? We watch LSU constantly, so we have the homer in us. But for me, I just didn't follow the draft enough this year. I didn't have any guys that I was like in love with.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's how when you're picking 62 now. If we had known, I think at the beginning of this, maybe that would have piqued our interest slightly more. But again, at 62, it's just how can you get excited about individual players? We know the top 60 guys are gone before they pick.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I'm very excited that the Saints didn't burn the first. You know, and look, I know we made the joke at the beginning that they're going to trade assets in October, but just if you have your first round pick, I think giving away a future first is always so risky. You know, they did it with Davenport and it worked out because they were awesome and it ended up 30. But man, if your season goes off the rails just a little bit and you don't have that first round pick, God, it's depressing because then you're in December and you're like out of the playoffs. You don't have anything to look forward to during the year. The year you thought you were going to have is stunk.